Thank you, Justin, really for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here, Ramona.
Your new report talks about how AI may disrupt the career pathway, particularly for those who don't have a 4-year degree. Can you give us a little insight into what your, high level findings are?
Absolutely. There's been a lot of work to date that thinks about which roles are exposed to AI. How is it going to change the ways that we work? When are people going to be replaced? When are people going to be assisted? And most of that work has focused on the individual job. What is this job going to change, and how are workers going to be impacted? And so I can use the example of a customer service rep. There are more than 2 million workers in this role today, and it's an occupation where we're seeing relatively high levels of observed exposure to AI, where AI is either assisting or replacing tasks that were previously done by humans. And there are pretty serious ramifications for those workers themselves. Does this mean I'm going to continue having a job, a career in this occupation? But we think that this work really focuses on broadening that conversation and thinking about workers who are currently in lower wage roles, building skills for which this role would be their next step. And if this job is no longer available, what does it mean for worker mobility? The second question is, what does this mean for employers who currently are hiring for higher wage roles, for which this is currently an established talent pipeline that might no longer exist? So the ramifications are threefold. For the workers themselves in the job, absolutely, but also for workers who are currently doing lower wage work, whose mobility is now potentially at risk, and for employers who might end up with talent shortages if we don't navigate this solution together.
So, how many people are we talking about? It seems like entry level, because we're hearing a lot of talk about how entry level jobs are being really impacted. So, again, it's that gateway job. So, how many people are we talking about?
Our work focuses on all workers because pathways matter for everybody, but it especially focuses on workers who are skilled through alternative routes or STARs. These are workers who have built their skills through places other than through a 4-year degree. It's through on the job experience, it's through military service, it's through training programs, apprenticeships. There are more than 70 million STARs in the US labor force, and about 16 million of them are in roles that are highly exposed to AI. Again, the conversation to date has really focused on the risks of AI for high wage work and for work that college graduates are going into. And again, those risks are really real. It's a new risk for many of those workers. But 43% of the workers who are highly exposed to AI are stars who don't have that 4-year degree and who often face additional barriers in the ways in which they move throughout the labor market. So this is millions of workers, and it's in a broader set of occupations than a lot of us have been talking about.
So, you mentioned a couple of occupations. Where are you seeing it happen the most right now, or where are you fearing? Because I know this is a evolving problem.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the attention has focused on risks happening in the Bay Area for workers who are computer programmers, for example. And again, those risks are real, and we're seeing some early adoption signs that suggest changes in the way that that work is done, some changing in hiring behavior. And those roles matter a lot. I'll keep saying again, everything matters, and it's a broader set of jobs. The roles that we focus on in this report, we refer to as gateway occupations. These are roles that sit really centrally in a worker's mobility journey. And they're roles that have multiple paths in from lower wage work and that have multiple pathways out to yet higher wage work. And so they play this really central role where a lot of mobility pathways run through them. And these gateway occupations have some really substantial exposure to AI. There are more than 11 million stars in gateway occupations today that are highly exposed to AI involvement. It includes customer service representatives, a broad set of what we might call back office jobs. So think of your office clerks, your HR workers, administrative assistants, and the list goes on. It includes computer support. Uh, there's plenty of sales workers who are going to be impacted as well, and these are pathways that have historically been available to both stars and workers with degrees. Have been sources of good, stable income, and roles in which we think that the jobs themselves might change substantially.
You mentioned in the report low adaptive capacity. I found that a good uh, a good description? Tell the audience what you mean by that. The
Yeah, adaptive
workers that fall into that.
absolutely. Adaptive capacity is a new measure developed by some scholars, including Sam Manning, that looks at the ability of a worker to navigate an involuntary job loss. Again, involuntary job loss, not fun for anyone, but workers have a different ability to weather that loss financially in terms of current savings, in terms of their age, in terms of their geographic location and the jobs that are available, and the transferability of the skills that they have in their current role. And that work highlights the fact that, yes, job losses might come to many workers, but not every worker has the same ability to weather that storm and find their way to the next role. And stars are uniquely more vulnerable. When we think about both exposure and the ability to adapt and to weather that job loss, there's a millions of stars who fall into both categories of higher vulnerability.
Do you see any geographic locations that seem you mentioned the Silicon Valley as one area for the higher skilled workers that there's concern. But about this, lower wage worker, do you see any geographic locations that there are problems?
Yeah, when we think about back office roles, which might not be externally facing, they end up in a lot of geographies where there's lots of office buildings, and we've seen this work get concentrated, specifically in the Sun Belt. So you can think of Arizona, where there's a uniquely high concentration of call center workers and customer service representatives. Some of this down in Florida, Texas as well. Again, just the concentration of jobs that are likely to be affected a bit higher here. You also see this in like university towns where the work is very process driven. Like, yes, there is the teaching component, but at its core, a lot of universities are driven by individual workers driving processes forward and making sure forms get sent in the right directions. And that's a lot of the type of work that stars currently do and that are also at risk. Um, now, that this work is not all doom and gloom. There's certainly an urgency here, but AI exposure, despite its negative connotation, is not inherently negative. We might see AI deployed in ways that displace workers, but we also might see it deployed in ways that assist and augment workers, allowing workers to do jobs they previously couldn't, allowing them to move between jobs more quickly, more easily. And so there is this like choice for us. There's a lot of agency for employers, policymakers, workforce boards to think about how we navigate this moment well. In the other hopeful category, which is related to this question, Ramona, is that there are some jobs that are gateway occupations and that are a bit more secure. And this has a bit of that regional component. We see more job security in construction, in manufacturing, and in healthcare. And so in regions where those are more dominant and more concentrated, we do see a bit more security for workers at the moment.
You also, on the positive side of it, that AI can enhance roles along the pathway, and part of the report talks about collaboration.
Uh,
About being able to use AI to accelerate learning perhaps or give valuable feedback. You wanna tell me a little bit more about that?
yeah, I'm going to use an example. When we think about the healthcare system, there's huge need in acute settings. We need nursing and all kinds of folks with really unique knowledge and skill sets to support patients. In the US in particular, there's a broadening set of work that is focused on chronic care. And chronic care is a little bit different. It's about making sure folks do the things we need to, taking our medication, following the instructions handed in front of us. And so there are some employers who've started thinking about, are there ways that we can tackle this work differently? And can we think about technological solutions where maybe we're doing virtual conversations and it's those types of check-ins? And one company in particular, it has explored whether we can use AI to fill in some of the medical knowledge about medication types and then lean on the skills that workers have in terms of connecting with someone helping with the chronic care. Because in those settings, the thing you need most is the ability to build trust, to persuade someone, to listen, to understand where they're at, and help them do the things they need to. And for this one employer, they've looked at who has been most successful in terms of using the tool and helping workers. What past career did they come from? And it actually wasn't coming out of the healthcare system. The job that folks were most prepared to lean in well and support were actually bartenders.
Hmm.
Bartenders are good at building trust. They're good at listening and hearing between the lines. And again, you can think of AI as filling in some of what was previously a knowledge gap and making a different set of skills more relevant, the human skills, that human connection. And so it's a playful example, yes. But we can think about that for a broad set of jobs in the economy. How can we elevate the uniquely human skills that workers are currently building in so many jobs to do new work that perhaps wasn't even previously an option?
So, one of the conclusions in the report was that we could be facing maybe a labor shortage if we don't kind of fix this pathway now. We don't fix this ladder. So 5 to 10 years from now, maybe we could have a labor shortage. So I'm going to just ask it simply, what now? What do we do?
I think there are plenty of folks that want to tackle this problem because they care about the American worker. We want to keep economic mobility alive in the United States because we care about people. And absolutely. From the perspective of the employer, there's such immense pressure to maximize profit and not long term profit, but short term profit. And the easiest way to do it at this moment using AI is to try to use AI to reduce costs, reduce the cost of workers, and see that momentary blip. But that's a really short sighted solution because we need to think about 5 to 10 years from now when we want workers with 5 to 10 years of experience. Where are we going to find them? If we take apart the internal pathways that we currently rely on, no longer developing entry level talent. And that matters from like an individual perspective, but this is also a collective action problem because for most employers, your best future employee is likely building their skills somewhere else right now. And what if that stops happening at your peers, your competitors? They're also making the same short term decision to not invest in those talent pipelines, to not build new talent. And suddenly, not just me, one employer, but all of us, an entire region, an entire network of employers are worse off. Right? And Ramona, this is that skill shortage that we might end up in if we don't make thoughtful choices about how we sustain the pathways that work today, continue building the talent of tomorrow, and using AI in ways where we build new pathways for new jobs that neither of us could currently imagine, but that are very likely to exist in the next 3, 5, 10 years.
Justin, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ramona.